Well, good day to you. It is November the 11th, and I hope you are having a great day. My name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome you to Search for Science. And as I always like to do, point out if you're new and remind those people who have heard these videos and perhaps haven't done this yet, that if you want to know more about this information, if you want to see if there's any truth to what I'm saying about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, hopefully at some point, whenever you're ready, you will check out some of those websites that I provided links for in the description portion of every one of these videos. So hopefully you'll do that. Now, if you want to come back and you want to join the discussion, you can, of course, if you so choose, post your comment. Let me know what you think, good or bad. I don't care. And a lot of times, like today, I'll address those comments. If they really pertain to what we talk about and we can learn from those comments, I'll do that. You can also ask a question by posting your questions in the comment section, or you can have a sidebar conversation with me or ask your question in private by emailing me at searchforscience@mail.com. Alrighty, now, we're going to talk about peace today because I think peace is the most important thing. And I'm going to start off with Claudia Helmer. She said, well, I want peace, and I thank you for your comment. Now, I kind of seriously jokingly replied to her by saying, Sai Baba once said, get rid of I, get rid of want, and you'll have peace. Now, Sai Baba, the image of Sai Baba is the black and white photo at the very bottom left of this background image of all these gentlemen. You know, most of them are masters, and then Ben is not a master. But anyway, Sai Baba was a great master who lived. He just passed away a few years ago, and will be coming back again as another Sai Baba. But when he was here in this last time around, somebody asked him, well, I want peace. And he said, well, get rid of I, get rid of want, and you'll have peace. Get rid of the sense of separate self, get rid of the desire nature, and sure as a world, you will find as much peace as these masters, because that's why they are always at peace. They have no sense of separate self, and they have no personal desire for themselves. So, something to ponder on. Now, I knew what you meant, and to be honest with you, I want peace too. So, I do appreciate your comment, Claudia, nonetheless. All right, now, let's see. James Wambidi, what did you have to say? You always have something interesting to say. He said, writing through his messenger, Alice Bailey, the master, Joao Cool, top left. And he's talking about the picture here that I have. That is a photograph of one of the masters. Stated that Christianity will have to receive and accept the hard blows of the truth before the Christ, Lord Maitreya, returns or reappears. Now, personally, James, I don't remember reading that. Now, I'm not saying he didn't say that because, to be honest with you, I don't remember everything I read. Most of the stuff that I read in Alice Bailey is way above my pay grade. But if I could throw my 2 cents in there, I would say that if he did say that, and that's what he meant, that maybe possibly as an interpretation of it, just my interpretation, I'm not saying it's the interpretation, so I do need to clarify that maybe possibly a lot of that's already happened, because the vast majority of Christians have had to have the cold water of truth thrown into their face, not about this information, but just about their own beliefs. And a lot of that has already come from science. So let me elaborate on that a little bit. So over the past few centuries, right, science more and more and more is kind of in its own way, perhaps some of it is conscious, some of it is unintended, to disprove a lot of what people were thinking is true based off of their religious texts, the mystical view of their religious texts. So, and it's been difficult for some people to take. In a lot of ways, if you look at the spectrum between a hardcore fanatical mystic and a hardcore scientist, right? And then you got everybody in between. You got people like my mother who would consider themselves Christians, goes to church every Sunday, believes Jesus is their only true Son of God and all that kind of stuff, but yet at the same time has accepted science, hasn't denied science in any way, thinks that scientists are explaining the universe. But that's not true for all Christians. There are some Christians who are digging in their heels about science and have denied science and trying to push it away as much as possible. Believe the earth is flat, believe the heaven is in the sky and and hell is in the center of the earth somewhere, and that Jesus is the only true Son of God, and that's what they believe, right? And that at some point, when the earth started, it started about 5,000 years ago. There's no such thing as the dinosaurs, even though there's all these skeletons of dinosaurs all over the place, you know what I mean? And that the world is eventually going to end in the not-so-distant future. That's what they believe. Science believes the universe and the world are much older, that it's evolving, but yet don't believe in perhaps something as simple as the law of cause and effect that Jesus talked about in the Bible, because hasn't been proven in a lab. Do you know? So, you got extremes everywhere. But I do think that they've are routinely getting the water thrown into their cold water thrown into their face to wake them up by science, and the truth of the reality coming from the Ageless Wisdom Teachings view about the Christ, who and what the Christ is, what he means for humanity, not just for them, but for all of humanity. Reincarnation, these masters, that humanity is not at the pinnacle of the spiritual, food chain, so to speak, on this planet even, that there are kingdoms above it. Immediately above it is the masters, life on other planets, that kind of thing. The belief that we are a soul in incarnation, which will be proven in a lab for scientists to accept too, and to be able to research for themselves, will be revelations for all of humanity, really not just for them. But the three things that I remember him saying that humanity needed to do to signal to Maitreya that humanity was ready, I guess have already taken place. The first two, I think very easily, you could make the claim that they've already taken place. The third one is very difficult for me to get. But anyway, we're going to go through it so we can kind of understand it better. But the Christians are not alone in waiting a teacher to come back. They all expect him to come back in a very mystical way, in a very finite amount of time. Meaning that when Jesus comes back, that's the day he comes back. It's not a process, okay? Just as the Buddhists are waiting the fifth Buddha, Maitreya, to come back at a certain time. The Jews are waiting the Messiah to come back at a certain time. It's not a process, it's just going to happen. And it's not dependent on humanity or anything, what that's going on in humanity. It's just going to happen whenever it happens, because that's the way life is. There's no free will of humanity, nothing, right? So, but the three things that Maitreya gave through Alice Bailey to give out to humanity that humanity had to do, the first one is a measure of peace had to be restored. The other one is the principle of sharing had to at least start to govern the minds of the world leaders. And then the third thing, which I think is very difficult to understand based on what's going on today, is the political parties had to clean up some of the corruption in their parties. As Ben always put it, put their house in order. So did that happen? I guess enough of it did, but I don't see it. So I would say, and I kind of jokingly say this, but there's a lot of truth to me joking about it, is that I think it would take the level of Maitreya, with the love that he has for humanity, to see that the political parties have done anything to put their house in order, to clean up some of their corruption. But I guess they have, to some degree. Now, the first two, you can make the claim that the Marshall Plan is what that was. That signaled to Maitreya that we were ready. And I have two links in the description portion of these videos for those who want to know more about the Marshall Plan. And I do recommend that you read more about it, because it's very important for humanity. Maitreya says it like this, okay? Let me take a step back and talk about how and why the principle of sharing is so important. But Maitreya says, without sharing, there will be no justice. And without justice, there will be no peace. And without peace, there will be no future for humanity. Our future depends on whether we get the principle of sharing done or not. Far more important than any political or any ideology. He never said, you have to believe in what I believe in order for there to be justice. Believe what I believe in order for there to be peace. And believe what I believe in order for there to be a future. It's all about the principle of sharing. Now, what is the principle of sharing? Well, if you look at the Marshall Plan, this is an historical fact. Now, the problem is, nobody looks at it like this. So even the two links, if you were to go to the description portion of this video and click on the link about sharing. That takes you to the YouTube page, the Nat Geo YouTube page, I think, that talks about the Marshall Plan. They don't mention it from this perspective. If you go to the Wikipedia page about the Marshall Plan, it doesn't talk about it from this perspective, but this is a perspective that I want you to think about when reading about the Marshall Plan, is it brought about a measure of peace between these nations. Now, according to Ben's master, was the only time that the principle of sharing was ever tried. And also, it was the only time that the United States' soul quality of the love nature, the love wisdom ray, which is the soul ray of the United States, is the only time it ever manifested. Every other time that the United States has given aid to a country, they've always put restrictions and put strings on it. And a lot of times they have to pay it back with interest and all that kind of stuff. Or the United States wanted to put a base in there or something like that. And so, but this was the only time that the United States ever gave freely their resources to other nations. And it brought about a measure of trust amongst those nations, because the way it worked is the way that the principle of sharing will eventually work. The United States gave excesses of their resources to Western Europe to rebuild Western Europe. Western Europe eventually did do that. It kept them from going back into another world war, which would have been the Third World War. You know, there had already been two. There would have been a third one had we not done this. And at that point, we actually had the atomic bomb. Russia had the atomic bomb, and that could have been used had we not done this. So, but we rebuilt Western Europe, and then Western Europe, once it was done rebuilding itself, it gave back in payment what it took. That's the principle of sharing. But if you look at the nations that participated in it, they weren't always peaceful and friendly with one another. But now look at it. Even 70 so odd years after it happened, we trust those nations better than any other nations on the planet. We can travel easier to those nations than any other nations on the planet, and vice versa. You know, there isn't restrictions on travel in that way, like there is to other countries and those people coming from those countries into the United States. You know, that's why there's historical evidence of what Maitreya is saying is true. Without sharing, there would be no justice. Without justice, there would be no peace. There's historical evidence in the Marshall Plan. But I do think that signaled to Maitreya that we were ready. Now, I don't think ideologically anything needs to take place or change in order for Maitreya to come back into the everyday world, because we still have those problems. You know, the divisions ideologically in religion, right? Most of it's coming from our own, you know, way of misinterpreting our own scriptures. Not just Christians, but everybody. You know, even the Ageless Wisdom Teaching people misinterpret what they're saying. You know what I'm saying? Because it's coming from a very high source. And we're not at a high source yet. We're still coming from the Dark Ages, you know? And so it's just a matter of time before humanity starts to wake up to the reality that we are one, for one thing, that we are one humanity. And that's where it's going to start. That's where a lot of these ideological divisions, religious divisions, will start to just fade away naturally, because we'll start to wake up to the fact that we're one. We'll start to trust one another like we're one family. But it will only come from the principle of sharing. It's not going to be the other way around. It's not going to be a change in religious ideology and then they'll bring about peace. It won't. And because if that was the case, then Maitreya would be bringing that into that whole discussion. It's all about the resources of the world being equitably distributed amongst humanity. So hopefully that does help. All right, but thank you very much for the discussion, James. You always give me something to think about in your comments. Now, Robert Vasquez, in response to the last video where I was talking about the sword of cleavage, another religious reference misinterpreted by Christians to mean that there will never be peace on this planet. We should never even try to bring about peace, because Jesus said, I come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword, the sword of cleavage. But according to the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, that had nothing to do with an actual sword, and it had nothing to do with peace is not possible or shouldn't try to be obtained or manifested. So Robert Vasquez said, what about the different energies that Lord Maitreya wields and is focused in the world? And he's right in asking that question, because the energies that are flowing through Maitreya, not only the love nature of God, but there's also two great avatars that aren't even in our solar system, whose energies are flowing through Maitreya at tremendous potency that are helping to cause the divisions that we're seeing in the world. They're temporary, but they're necessary. And the first one is coming from one avatar, the avatar of synthesis. The other one is the spirit of peace and equilibrium, and that's all we know about them. Which isn't very much, right? But the energies that they are sending through Maitreya, they're actually overshadowing Maitreya in the exact same way as Maitreya overshadowed Jesus when he was in Palestine, as Ben's master overshadowed him when he was alive, and that kind of thing. It's the exact same way. But those energies are being sent out into the world at tremendous potency, affecting all of humanity. But according to Ben's master, the avatar of synthesis, his energy is so powerful that there isn't any impediment that humanity can put in its way. Eventually, it will blow right past it. But what is the purpose behind this energy? It's going to be bringing humanity together. It's synthesizing all of humanity, harmony and diversity in a way that we can never even possibly imagine today. The other avatars, and this is just a very limited understanding of it coming from me to you. Okay, so I don't know anything about it either, probably not much more than most people who have read Ben's books, so take it for what it is. But the spirit of peace and equilibrium, according to Ben's comments on it, he works within the law of cause and effect, and everything has its equal and opposite reaction. So as far as humanity can move in the path of division, as we're seeing today, where it can never get more divided than it is today. It seems like the next year we're even more divided, and okay, this has got to be it. And then the next thing, we're even more divided, right? As far as we can get toward the path of division, it will eventually swing us back in the other way. I always kind of imagine it like throwing a tennis ball against a wall. And the harder you throw the tennis ball against the wall, the harder it flows back. And that's basically what its energy is doing at this moment in time. But the one thing that Maitreya said that might shed some light on that whole thing, there was an experience that I didn't have, but I read about it in Share International. That's why I always encourage you to go to the Share International site. There's actually letters that you can read from ordinary people who have met Maitreya. And some of the teachings that Maitreya will be teaching humanity in the future, he's already started to teach humanity through these people writing it and having it published in Share International. Quite extraordinary. But this one was coming from Ben's own daughter. And apparently she was, according to the letter, she was having a very rough time in her life. I don't know if she was going through a breakup or something like that, but based on the discussion that Maitreya had with her, you could kind of assume that she was. And she maybe was in love with somebody, and they broke up with her, and she was all hurt up about it and stuff. But anyway, so she was walking through Hyde Park one day, many years ago. Maitreya approached her and appeared as an older man and started walking with her. And he said, "Do you mind if I walk with you for a while?" And she said, "Sure." And he goes, "You mind if I tell you something?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's fine." And I guess she started to kind of open up to him. And he goes, everything in life is energy. And this is so true. This is what Maitreya will be teaching humanity. Everything in life is energy. And all that energy has its opposites. So, just because you're having a bad year this year, who's to say next year won't be the best year of your life? And he goes, when you might be totally in love with somebody this year, thinking they are the best and most fine and wonderful person in the world, you can't live your life without them. And then the next year, you can't stand the person. So he said that's why marriage is so much easier than dating, which I know that to not be true. But anyway, he said that just because you're having a bad year this year, who's to say next year isn't the best year of your life? He goes, you never know what's right around the bend. And that's why suicide is not a good option. It's never a good option, because you might be missing out on the best part of your life, right? But it's all because of energy. Everything in life is energy, as Robert was saying in his comment. Everything is energy. So quite an extraordinary time that we're living in. And just because life is rough for humanity, just because we're divided now, just because there's the chance that we could destroy ourselves ecologically or militarily, who's to say that in the very near future it's not going to swing back the other way and we'll be living in a totally different world, clean environment, all humanity all living as one, all people's needs being taken care of, and we've had true and manifested peace. And that will come from energy. the energy that humanity is using, the energy that humanity will eventually be using in the future, but everything in life is created by energy, according to Maitreya and these masters. Everything. Our whole lives are all energy. And as that energy shifts, we change along with the energy. But thank you very much for the comments. I love you guys. You guys have a great day, and we'll look forward to putting out videos in the future. Have a wonderful day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.